with us. Following the discovery of the new COVID-19 variant Omicron, Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Wamkele Mene, has described the travel ban of some African countries as modern-day neo-colonialism. For more on this, we are joined by Wamkele, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Just speak to us about your sentiments around the ban of some African countries to travel to other African countries due to the discovery of Omicron.
Well, thank you very much. As we know, there are a number of countries around the world that have imposed travel restrictions on primarily Southern African countries, but recently we now know that Nigeria and Egypt have been added to the list. And our position is clear. It is that these travel restrictions are discriminatory in nature, and they are in violation of international trade law. Under international trade law, you cannot treat one country differently to another to the extent that you are all members of the World Trade Organization. So on the face of it, it is our very, very clear position that this is discriminatory. And on Friday, I described this unilateral arbitrary act by these developed countries. I described it as apartheid and neo-colonialism. There is no explanation, absolutely no justifiable explanation that would support the position of these developed countries. Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, these countries have not recorded any Omicron variants, and yet Belgium, Israel, Hong Kong, Germany, many countries around the world who have detected the Omicron variant have not had their travel restricted. So this is the party. This is no different from what we went through as a country, South Africa. This is now the apartheid that we see. These measures are at a global scale. And so, and I'm traveling to the US tonight, and I will tell the US authorities in no uncertain terms that from a trade perspective, they are in violation of international trade law. They are in violation of international humanitarian law. They are in violation of international solidarity in the fight against the pandemic. And I join the World Health Organization in congratulating Botswana and South Africa for having undertaken the genome sequencing and therefore thereby was able to detect this variant, which we now know existed in Europe at least 3 to 4 weeks before it was detected in Southern Africa. And as you may well be aware, the government of Botswana is of the view that it was brought to Botswana by Europeans themselves. And so these measures are entirely unjustified under international law.
Sure. Wamkele, maybe we can just touch on the point that you made about the World Health Organization. On Thursday, they had a briefing to say that Omicron seems to be in about 60 countries, of which only 10 on the African continent. Why do you think Africa is being treated this way?
Well, in my view, it's racism. It is unadulterated racism. There is absolutely no justification why a country such as Belgium or Holland, countries that have detected the virus in their borders, within their borders, and yet they are not subject to the same travel restrictions that Southern African countries, Nigeria and Egypt, have been subjected to. It is on the basis of race. It's neo-colonialism, it is racist, it is despicable, it is disgraceful that African countries are being treated in this way. And more importantly, because we are a trade secretariat, it is actually inconsistent with the spirit of multilateral trade, open trade. It violates the rights, economic rights of African countries. It is entirely unacceptable, and these measures should be rescinded immediately. But I don't think that will happen. as much as we may protest.
Yeah, sorry to interject, but then what is the solution? So African countries that have been barred and these travel restrictions that have been imposed, we can shout very loud and say this is unfair, this is discrimination, we shouldn't be treated this way. But it seems as though this is not filtering through to the people and the countries that are actually imposing these bans.
My sense is that these countries do not care. I don't think that they care. The solution, in my view, is long-term. And that is that, and that's again why we exist as a secretariat, that we have to work as Africa to be self-sufficient from an industrial development point of view, from an economic development point of view, that 30 to 40 years down the line, when there is another pandemic, which we know will happen, we should be in a position where we are completely self-reliant in terms of value chains, that yes, we may still have some connection to global supply chains and global value chains, but primarily Africa's dependence should be on other African countries and not be entirely reliant, as we are today, on global supply chains that when there's a disruption, that leave us in a very vulnerable state as African countries. And so I see this as a wake-up call for us Africans, that yes, there may be platitudes of solidarity that we hear from time to time. Some leaders in developed countries will quote Comrade President Nelson Mandela, but in reality, they take measures that are inconsistent with the values of President Mandela, as much as they quote him all the time, which we know they do. And so my view is that ultimately, the way in which we protect ourselves as Africans from this indignity that we have been subjected to is to accelerate our own industrial development, to accelerate Africa's capacity to manufacture all of, for example, the germ-killing products that we need to fight the pandemic, the personal protection equipment. That's where the answer is, in my opinion.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. That was Wamkele Mene. It's also fascinating that Africa's been treated this way, especially after Africa was last in line to get vaccines, and the richer and more advanced economies were first in line.